Last season, less than 1% of active Merge Tactics players have reached Diamond, which shows that it's very hard to get. And given that Diamond is the final rank in the game, it is crucial to hit it to show that you're a good player. So here are the exact 10 tips that carried me all the way from bronze to top 1 in the world. Starting things off, guys, the first tip is to use the Spirit Empress. Now, she's the best ruler in the game, in my opinion, by far, because over the long run, she is the most profitable. How her ability works is she gains 2 elixir per merge, whereas both other rulers only gain 1. So with every single merge you get, you're gaining 1 additional elixir that the other rulers are missing out on. And look, the other 2 rulers are more consistent, I would say early game, you could argue. But over the long run, the Empress is much more profitable. And yeah, the other heroes might help you in those bad RNG games, but those are very few mathematically, and over a large sample size, the Empress will get more value. If you don't have the Spirit Empress because she's not unlockable in the current season, the Goblin Queen is also viable, though I do think the Spirit Empress is a bit better if you have the option. Now that you're using the Spirit Empress, tip number 2 is to learn how to farm effectively. Now guys, in the context of merge tactics, farming simply means that in the early game, you want to be able to generate a sizable amount of elixir, so that in the mid to late game, you can spend that elixir to buy cards in your comp and upgrade cards. And how to farm elixir with the Spirit Empress is, again, the Spirit Empress playstyle relies on the fact that you get 2 elixir per merge. And if you think about it mathematically, if you merge 2 cards, then you'll gain 2 elixir. But if you sell that merge, you lose 1 elixir, so you'll have a net gain of 1. So every time you merge and immediately sell a card, you gain 1 elixir. So this whole early game is based on that premise. What you want to do is you want to buy the cheapest card in every shop, because if you buy the cheapest card, you'll have leftover elixir to keep rolling shop and buy more cards. And if you can get the more 1-star cards you can get, the higher the probability you have to roll duplicates of a card. And of course, duplicates means that you'll get a merge. So you'll basically just keep buying the cheapest card, and then when you get a merge, you'll merge it, and then you'll sell it, and then you rinse and repeat, merge and sell until you can get enough elixir. And then once you get a lot of cards, I would say this is a defining factor. Once you get a decent amount of cards, maybe 5, or I don't know, 5 plus, once you get a lot of cards, and you get maybe 6 or 7 elixir, then at that point, you could likely maintain an infinite streak of just merging and selling, and at that point, you're done with farming elixir. Alright, now that you know how to farm elixir effectively, we're moving to tip 3, which is learn how to cycle the shop effectively. And now guys, cycling is a bit of a different term than a normal clash. And in the merge tactics, when people say cycling, they usually mean just rolling the shop. And in order to roll the shop effectively, you basically want to do it infinitely. Because imagine if you roll the shop infinitely, well then you'll eventually get the cards that you'll need. And so how to cycle the shop effectively is after you have enough elixir. If you're low in elixir, you should get the merge and then sell it just so you can keep your elixir supply healthy, and so that you're able to kind of fuel your cycle and keep going. But when you have a medium to high amount of elixir, you'd want to buy the cards that you'd actually need, so the cards in your comp. And this is just an endless cycle you do. When you're low on elixir, you merge and sell to keep your supply of elixir healthy. When you're high in elixir, you buy the cards, and this basically allows you to infinitely cycle the shop and get all the cards you need. Now that you know how to cycle the shop and farm elixir, tip 4 is that accuracy is always more important than speed. You'll see a lot of content creators from merge tactics kind of cycling their shop extremely fast, buying cards really fast, selling them extremely fast. I mean, I've done this in the past before, as you guys have seen, but what I've learned to realize is that accuracy is just so much more important than speed. Because imagine this. Let's say you're cycling really fast and your brain just can't keep up with it. I mean, of course, there's a human theoretical limit, and once you pass that human theoretical limit of sort of pattern recognition, well, then you're going to pass a lot of the cards that you actually need. And when you pass cards that you need, you're going to have to roll the shop multiple more times to get it back. So it's actually going to cost you time in the long run. So especially when you're starting out, learning how to play the Spirit Empress, just go slow. Make sure you're picking all the correct cards, whether it's a merge or a card you actually need. Just make sure all your decisions are correct, and your speed will naturally improve over time. Alright guys, the 5th tip, now that you've mastered the Spirit Empress gameplay, is to learn comps. Now guys, in this game, there are certain comps, and what I mean by comps is basically a group of cards, right? A certain selection of cards. Everyone gets up to 6 cards they can have on their board, and a comp is just a certain matching of these 6 cards. And there are certain comps that are just better than other combinations of cards, and You can look for these online. I've posted a video, top 3 comps in the game. I still think that holds true, but basically the short version is Juggernauts and Brawlers, they are the best maxed out traits right now in my opinion. And then Brawlers and Juggernauts, they'll take up 4 out of 6 cards in your comp, and then the last 2 cards are pretty flexible. You can use, I like to use Assassins, I like to use Blasters, Fire, sometimes Electric is kind of a last resort. But basically, you'd want to learn these exact comps because as you practice playing these exact comps, you'll kind of recognize the cards better in the shop, which will help you go faster. And of course, these comps, they are just better, so your potential will be much higher. Tip 6 is to learn how to place your units. And to learn how to place your units, you want to utilize your card's strength. So for example, if you have any tankier units like the Knight, let's say you have a Knight and a Goblin, you'd want your Knight to tank, so maybe in that case, you'd place your Goblin behind your Knight so that your Knight tanks, and your Goblin can get his damage in. Another example is that, let's say you have the Juggernaut trait, you want to place your cards, your other units behind your Juggernauts so that they get the shield. If you have Blasters, place them as far back as you can. Noble, place them in the front and back lanes. A lot of this is kind of developed over practice, but those are the fundamentals of placement. And of course, you want to counter your opponent's placement by scouting them with your own placement. Tip 7 is to be flexible, guys. Now that you've learned all of your comps and gotten better at placements, well, now you need to actually know when to decide which comp to run. And this depends on multiple factors. The first factor is what you simply get in your shop. Let's say at the beginning of the game, after you farm elixir, you're getting a lot of Juggernauts. Well, then maybe you just want to go Juggernauts because you already have a large component of that comp. A second factor is you want to scout your opponents in the early game and see what cards they have, because there are only 4 copies of a card in the entire shared pool. Basically, for example, let's say there are only 4 Knights. There are only 4 copies of a Knight in the entire shared pool, and what I mean by shared pool is that all 4 players in your game share the same access, the same supply of every card. So, for example, let's say your opponent has a 2-star Knight, which requires 2 copies to get. Well, then they have 2 copies, meaning that there are only 2 more copies in the pool, meaning that at best you can only get 2 copies and 2-star your Knight, which is not ideal. You want to be able to go for the most amount of 2 stars you can. So instead of competing with him, you'd want to go for a different comp so that you can actually max out that comp. So you definitely want to be flexible because in certain scenarios, there are other comps that are just going to be better in that case. Tip 8, guys, is to scout your opponents often. Now, this is important for multiple reasons, of course, as I mentioned. Picking your comps, that's important. Placement is also important for scouting your opponents so that you can orient your troops in a position to counter theirs. Another one is, let's say you're running Assassins and they have a huge backline and their front line isn't protecting them. Well, then you could go Assassins last second just to snipe their ranged units and just to take them out very easily. So the whole point of this game is to scout your opponents. Another thing is you want to block your opponent's cards. Again, the shared pool concept is that there are only 4 copies of a card in the entire pool that all 4 players share. And if one person grabs one of the 4 copies, then there are only 3 copies left. And in order to max out a card, so to 3-star it in most modifiers, you need 4 copies. So if you have 1 copy, they can only get 3, therefore they cannot 3-star. So what blocking means is you want to take at least 1 copy of one of their cards so that they can't max out their card. Now guys, tip 9 is one of the most important tips, and it's to preserve your mental. Now guys, this is a game based on a lot of RNG. Yes, there is skill, but there's also a lot of RNG, as you guys, I'm sure everybody watching this video has experienced. Some games you just don't get a merge. Some games your shop is terrible. You get only expensive cards. It happens to the best of us. Now, this is inevitable, so there's no point in trying to prevent it, but the best course of action you can do is just understand that, yeah, some games you're just going to lose to RNG and it's just out of your control. But I know the worst feeling, guys, is to just lose a game that's not even your fault, that you really just don't have control over. So what I would say the best thing to do is 2 things. You either take a break and say, okay, look, my luck is really bad. My mental is kind of going down the drain. I just want to take a break, reset my mental, and get back into it. And the second thing is I like to think from a very objective and logical standpoint, just leave your emotions out of the game. After every game, I ask myself, okay, why did I lose? Was it genuinely RNG? If it was RNG, then fine, whatever, that's not my fault. I just want to focus on the factors that I can improve on. And look, you also might find yourself blaming RNG when it's not the case. I would just take a very logical mindset if you do want to improve at the game. And a good example of this, guys, is 2 days ago, I was so tilted because my RNG was completely terrible. And I just took a break from the game. At that point, I dropped like 100 trophies. I was like, okay, my mental's not good. And when you're tilted, of course, you make terrible decisions. And I slept for about 8 hours. I woke up, I got up early in the morning, and I pushed 300 trophies to diamond, and I only lost like 3 games. So that really just shows how much your mental can affect your performance. Now that you know everything conceptually, my final and 10th tip to you guys is to just play more games. Of course, that might be rather simple, like, yeah, I mean, duh, play more games. But look, merge tactics especially is based on muscle memory, and it's a very sort of algorithmic approach, you could say, to the game. There's not as much adaptability in this game as other games. So all you really need to know is, yeah, you just learn a certain perspective, certain decision making, and once you get that decision making, the rest of it is based on muscle memory. For example, let's say you've played the Juggernauts comp 10 times in a row. You'll learn to recognize the cards in the shop much more quickly and with much more ease than your first time playing Juggernauts, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced. So just make sure to get in those games, make the correct decisions, and you'll definitely make it to Diamond in no time. Now, that is the only Diamond guide you'll need in my opinion. I've literally put all 10 major tips that carried me all the way to Diamond. If you guys enjoyed this video, you would like to see more guides, more gameplay, just more merge tactics content in general, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out. Oh, and if you're curious about this last game, of course, I'm winning. Be for real. I'm the GOAT. But for real, tip 11 is if you made it this far, make sure to comment retake is goated, and I will heart your comment. But seriously, bye-bye.